David, I think something's wrong with me. I whispered those words to my grandson as I gripped the kitchen counter, fighting off another wave of dizziness. For months, I'd been getting weaker and more confused. Everyone said it was just age catching up with me. Everyone except David. Grandma, this doesn't feel right, he said, studying my face with the intensity he usually reserved for chemistry problems. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about my own life. The person who was supposed to care for me most had been lying to me for months. Someone I trusted completely was hiding something so dark, so calculated, that when the truth finally came out, it shattered everything. I heard what you said last night, David told me one afternoon, his voice shaking. When you thought I couldn't hear you. The pills I took every morning, the meals prepared with such loving care, the gentle voice reassuring me that everything would be okay. None of it was what it seemed. This is the story of how my grandson uncovered a secret that was hiding in plain sight. How someone who claimed to love me was planning something I never could have imagined. And how sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who tuck you into bed at night. But you need to understand how this all began, because evil doesn't announce itself with fangs and claws. It comes disguised as devotion. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We're creating a community of incredible women who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now, back to the story. My name is Helen Johnson, and for 40 years I ran Lincoln Elementary School in Springfield, Missouri. I could handle screaming parents, budget crises, and 300 students without breaking a sweat. At 71, I still balanced my own checkbook, drove myself everywhere, and kept a garden that made my neighbors jealous. Then everything changed on a Tuesday morning in March. I was reading the newspaper with my coffee when the words started swimming on the page. My left arm felt heavy, like it was filled with sand. When I tried to stand up, my legs wouldn't cooperate. Carol found me 20 minutes later, slumped in my kitchen chair, confused but conscious. "Mom, can you hear me? What day is it?" I knew it was Tuesday, but the word wouldn't come out right. Carol called 911 and the paramedics arrived within minutes. The hospital kept me for 3 days, running tests and monitoring my condition. "You've had what we call a transient ischemic attack," Dr. Martinez explained. "A very mild stroke. The good news is, there's no permanent damage, and your cognitive function is completely normal." But Carol wasn't convinced I should live alone anymore. "Mom, what if this happens again and nobody's around?" she said during the drive home from the hospital. "I worry about you constantly." Carol was my only child, 45 years old with kind eyes and a gentle way of speaking that had always made her the center of my world. She'd been struggling since her divorce 6 months earlier, working part-time at a dental office and living in a tiny apartment that barely fit her furniture. The doctor said it was very minor, sweetheart. I'm supposed to take an aspirin daily and watch my blood pressure, that's all. I know, but I'd feel so much better if someone was keeping an eye on you. Just for a few weeks, until we're sure everything's stable. The concern in her voice melted my resistance. Carol had always been the caring one, the daughter who remembered birthdays and called just to chat. If she was worried, maybe I should be too. "All right, but just temporarily. I don't want to cramp your style." Carol moved in that weekend with 2 suitcases and a grateful smile. She set up in my spare bedroom and immediately began what she called organizing for safety. My pill bottles, which I'd managed perfectly fine for years, suddenly became a source of concern. "Mom, these labels are so small, and you have so many different medications. What if you accidentally take the wrong dose?" She bought a plastic pill organizer with 7 compartments for each day, carefully sorting my medications into morning, afternoon, and evening sections. Each compartment was labeled in her neat handwriting. "See? Now you'll never have to wonder if you've taken your pills or not." Within a week, Carol had taken control of my morning routine. My coffee maker, which I'd operated successfully since 9. "Let me handle the coffee, Mom. You just relax and watch your morning shows." Part of recovery is not stressing about little things. My checkbook disappeared from the kitchen counter where I'd kept it for decades. "I put it somewhere safe?" Carol explained when I asked. "We don't want you accidentally paying bills twice or forgetting to pay them completely. Brain injuries can affect financial judgment, even minor ones." She convinced me to sign papers giving her temporary power of attorney for medical decisions. "It's just a precaution, Mom. If you have another episode and can't communicate, I need to be able to make medical choices for you. It's what Dad would have wanted." The mention of my late husband always settled any argument. Frank had died 3 years ago, and Carol knew I still missed his guidance on important decisions. By the end of the first month, Carol controlled my medications, my meals, my medical appointments, and my finances. Each change had seemed reasonable when she suggested it, but looking back, I'd handed over my entire life piece by piece. That's when the symptoms started getting worse. I began waking up exhausted every morning, no matter how much sleep I got. My hands developed a tremor that made writing nearly impossible. Simple tasks like folding laundry became overwhelming challenges that left me breathless and confused. "These are normal after effects of your stroke, Mom," Carol would say whenever I complained about feeling worse instead of better. "Recovery isn't linear. You have good days and bad days." But the bad days were becoming more frequent. My appetite vanished almost completely. Food tasted metallic and strange, and eating required tremendous effort that left me nauseous. Carol blamed my new blood pressure medication. "Loss of appetite is listed right there on the warning label. But you have to eat to maintain your strength. Let me make you something gentle on your stomach." She'd prepare bland soups and soft foods, always adding what she called healing spices that made everything taste bitter and medicinal. I'd manage a few spoonfuls before the nausea became unbearable. The worst part was my mind. I'd been sharp my entire life, quick with numbers and details. Suddenly, I couldn't remember conversations from the same morning. I'd walk into rooms and forget why I was there. Words I'd used confidently for decades would disappear mid-sentence. "Mom, you asked me the same question 3 times in the last hour," Carol would say gently. "And you tried to pay the electric bill twice this week. I think we need to discuss increasing your medication with Dr. Martinez." I wanted to argue, but the evidence was right there in my own handwriting. Multiple checks to the same company, notes I didn't remember making, appointments I'd apparently forgotten. By the 3rd month, I rarely left my bedroom except for meals. The walk to the kitchen left me dizzy and weak. Carol now brought me pills 4 times a day, explaining that my doctor had adjusted the dosages to help with my increasing confusion. "The most important thing is that you're safe and comfortable," she'd say, adjusting my pillows and dimming the lights. "Just focus on resting and let me handle everything else." I stopped questioning because my questions sounded foolish even to me. I stopped trying to manage my own affairs because I clearly wasn't capable anymore. I stopped fighting because fighting required energy I simply didn't have. Everything Carol said made perfect sense. I was an elderly woman recovering from a stroke, and recovery was harder than I'd expected. The medication was helping, even if it made me tired. The rest was necessary, even if it felt like giving up. What I didn't know was that Carol had been slowly poisoning me for months. What I didn't realize was that every concerned look, every gentle suggestion, every loving gesture was part of a calculated plan to steal everything I'd worked for. I was dying, and I thought it was just old age. David had always been my only grandson, and the light of my life. At 22, he was tall and lanky like his grandfather Frank, with the same curious mind that asked too many questions for most people's comfort. He was finishing his chemistry degree at Missouri State University, and his visits were the brightest spots in my increasingly dim world. Carol never seemed thrilled when David came by. "Mom needs her rest," she'd tell him at the door. "The doctor says too much stimulation can set back her recovery." But David had been visiting me every Sunday since he was 8 years old, and he wasn't about to stop now. He'd push past Carol's objections with the polite stubbornness I'd always admired in him. "I'll just sit quietly with Grandma Helen for a few minutes. I won't tire her out." On a Sunday in late August, David arrived to find me barely able to keep my eyes open. I was propped up in my recliner, struggling to focus on the television while Carol bustled around the kitchen preparing my afternoon medications. Grandma, you look terrible, David said, settling into the chair beside me. Are you feeling worse? Just tired, sweetheart. The medication makes me sleepy. David studied my face with the intensity he usually reserved for chemistry problems. What kind of medication? For the stroke? Blood pressure pills, mostly. Carol manages all that now. I gestured vaguely toward the kitchen where Carol was organizing my pill dispenser. Can I see them? Carol appeared in the doorway before I could answer. David, your grandmother doesn't need to worry about complicated medical details. That's why I'm here. I'm just curious about what the doctor prescribed. I've been studying pharmacology this semester. The prescriptions are between your grandmother and her doctor, Carol said firmly. Now she really does need to rest. Perhaps you could visit another time when she's feeling stronger. Something in Carol's tone must have triggered David's suspicion, because instead of leaving, he sat back down and started asking more questions. Grandma, when's the last time you saw Dr. Martinez? I tried to remember, but the weeks had blurred together. Carol handles the appointments now. Last month, maybe? What did he say about your recovery? I'm not sure. Carol was there. She can tell you. David looked at his mother with an expression I'd never seen before, not defiance exactly, but something close to it. Mom, maybe Grandma should hear directly from her doctor about her condition. Shouldn't she be involved in her own medical care? David, your grandmother had a stroke. Sometimes patients become anxious when they hear too many medical details. It's better for her peace of mind if I handle the communication with her doctors. But she seems more confused than she did right after the stroke. Shouldn't she be getting better by now? Carol's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Recovery is different for everyone. Some people have setbacks before they improve. David spent the rest of his visit watching Carol prepare my medications, asking casual questions about dosages and timing. Carol answered with increasing irritation, finally suggesting that David's medical school questions were inappropriate for a family visit. After David left, Carol brought me my evening pills with a forced smile. I'm sorry David upset you with all those questions, Mom. He means well, but sometimes college students think they know more than they actually do. I swallowed the pills obediently, but something nagged at me. David's questions hadn't upset me. If anything, his visit had been the first time in weeks that someone had talked to me like I still had a functioning brain. The next Sunday, David arrived with a small notebook and what he claimed was a school project about medication interactions in elderly patients. I have to interview someone over 65 about their prescriptions, he told Carol. It's for my pharmacology class. Would it be okay if I asked Grandma some questions? Carol looked suspicious, but she couldn't really object to a school assignment. I suppose that would be fine, as long as you don't tire her out. David sat beside me with his notebook open. Grandma, can you tell me what medications you're taking and when you take them? I tried to remember, but my mind felt wrapped in cotton. There are so many now. Carol organizes them for me. Can you describe how you feel after you take them? Any side effects? Tired. Always so tired. And my hands shake sometimes. David wrote everything down carefully. Do you remember feeling this way before your stroke? No. I felt fine before. Well, normal for my age. And the medications help with your blood pressure. I think so. Carol says they do. Carol hovered in the doorway during our entire conversation, occasionally correcting details or adding information I'd supposedly forgotten. But David kept asking questions, writing down my answers with the methodical precision of someone building a case. The following Tuesday, David called while Carol was at the grocery store. Grandma, I've been thinking about our conversation. Some of the medications you described don't sound right for stroke recovery. What do you mean? Well, you mentioned feeling extremely tired and having tremors. Those aren't typical side effects of standard blood pressure medication. And you said you're taking pills 4 times a day, which seems like a lot. I struggled to focus on what he was saying. Carol says the doctor adjusted everything after my stroke. When's the last time you actually spoke to Dr. Martinez yourself? The question hit me like cold water. I couldn't remember. Carol had been handling all my medical appointments, speaking to the doctors while I sat in waiting rooms feeling too confused to follow the conversations. I'm not sure. Grandma, would it be okay if I called Dr. Martinez's office just to ask about your medication schedule? Fear shot through me, though I couldn't identify why. Carol wouldn't like that. She says too many people asking questions confuses the medical staff. But you're the patient. You have the right to know about your own treatment. After David hung up, I sat in my chair staring at the pill organizer on the side table. 7 compartments for each day, each one filled with pills that were supposed to be helping me recover. So why did I feel worse every week instead of better? For the first time in months, I tried to think like the school principal I'd been for 4 decades. What would I do if a teacher brought me concerns about a student's welfare? I'd investigate, I'd ask questions, I'd get to the bottom of the situation. But when I tried to stand up to look at my pill bottles, the room spun around me. My legs felt like they were made of water, and I collapsed back into the chair, gasping. By the time Carol returned from the store, I'd convinced myself that David was worrying over nothing. I was an elderly woman recovering from a stroke. Feeling confused and weak was probably normal. But David wasn't finished asking questions, and the more he investigated, the more dangerous things became for both of us. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later when David arrived for his usual Sunday visit carrying a small plastic bag. "I brought you some of those peppermints you used to keep in your desk at school," he said, settling into his chair beside me. "Remember how you'd give them to kids who were having a rough day?" I smiled at the memory, though it felt distant and fuzzy. "You always managed to earn quite a few of those mints yourself." David unwrapped one and handed it to me, then took one for himself. We sat sucking on the candy while Carol prepared lunch in the kitchen, the familiar taste bringing back clearer memories than I'd experienced in months. "Grandma, I've been doing some research about stroke recovery," David said quietly. "Most people start feeling better after 3 months, not worse. Carol says everyone's different. Maybe, but I'd like to understand your medication better. Would you mind if I looked at the actual pill bottles sometime?" Before I could answer, Carol appeared with my lunch tray. Bland chicken soup again, with that bitter aftertaste I'd grown to expect from all my meals. "What are you two whispering about?" she asked with forced cheerfulness. "David was telling me about his chemistry classes," I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. After David left, I found myself thinking about those peppermints more clearly than I'd thought about anything in weeks. Why did 20 minutes with my grandson leave me feeling more alert than entire days with Carol? The next Tuesday, David called during Carol's grocery trip. "Grandma, I need to ask you something important. Do you trust me?" "Of course I do, sweetheart. The next time Mom gives you pills, I want you to accidentally drop a couple. Just fumble them when she hands them to you, and I'll help you pick them up during my next visit. Can you do that?" "Why?" "I think something's wrong with your medication. I've been researching your symptoms, and they don't match normal stroke recovery. I want to have some of your pills tested." "David, what are you suggesting?" "I'm not sure yet. But please, just save me a few pills so I can find out what you're really taking." Over the next week, I managed to accidentally drop several pills during my medication times. Carol always helped me pick them up, but I made sure to fumble a few under my nightstand where she couldn't see them. By Sunday, I had collected 5 different pills hidden in an old jewelry box Frank had given me years ago. When David arrived for his visit, I slipped him the pills during one of Carol's trips to the kitchen. "I'll have these analyzed at the chemistry lab," he whispered. "It might take a few days." The following Thursday, David called while Carol was at work. "Grandma, you need to sit down. The pills Mom's been giving you contain 3 different sedatives, plus a muscle relaxant that's not even prescribed for stroke patients." My hands started trembling not from medication this time, but from pure rage. What exactly was she giving me? Lorazepam, which is for severe anxiety, trazodone, which is primarily a sleep medication, and something called cyclobenzaprine, which is a muscle relaxant that can cause confusion and memory problems. All of them together, in the doses you were getting, could have killed you. Are any of them what Dr. Martinez actually prescribed? That's what we need to find out. But first, I want to try something. I'm going to make some harmless pills that look exactly like the ones Mom's been giving you. Just basic starch capsules that won't hurt you. What do you mean? I can access the lab equipment to create fake pills that look identical to the real ones. Then I'll switch them out in Mom's supply when she's not around. You'll start feeling better, but she won't know why. The plan terrified and thrilled me at the same time. When? This weekend. Mom mentioned she has a dental conference Saturday afternoon. I'll come over and make the switch while she's gone. Saturday arrived with agonizing slowness. Carol left for her conference at noon, reminding me to take my afternoon pills on time. 20 minutes later, David arrived with a small backpack. I've already made the fake pills, he said, showing me capsules that looked identical to my regular medication. Now I just need to find where Mom keeps her supply. We searched Carol's bedroom and found a plastic storage container in her closet filled with pill bottles I'd never seen before. None of them had my name on the labels, and several were marked with names I didn't recognize. These aren't even prescription bottles, David said grimly. She's been getting these drugs from somewhere else entirely. David carefully replaced the pills in my weekly organizer with his harmless substitutes, then refilled several of the bottles in Carol's secret stash. The switch took less than 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. Now we wait, David said. In a few days you should start feeling better, and Mom won't understand why her plan isn't working anymore. By Monday, something extraordinary was happening. For the first time in months, I woke up feeling actually rested instead of drugged. My mind felt clearer, like fog was slowly lifting from my thoughts. When Carol brought my morning pills, I took them obediently, not telling her they were now harmless starch capsules. She seemed pleased by my improved appetite at breakfast, not realizing that food tasted normal for the first time in weeks because I wasn't being poisoned anymore. Over the following week, I felt stronger and more alert each day. My hands stopped shaking, my appetite returned. Most importantly, my mind began working clearly again. But Carol started noticing my improvement by Wednesday. "You seem more energetic today, Mom," she said, watching me walk to the kitchen without stumbling. "Maybe we need to adjust your medication again." I had to be careful. Too much improvement too quickly would make her suspicious, so I pretended to have occasional confused moments and complained about still feeling tired, just not as severely as before. By Friday, Carol was definitely concerned. I overheard her on the phone with someone, speaking in hushed tones. "She's not responding the way she should be. The medication doesn't seem to be working as well." The following Sunday, David arrived with new determination. "How are you feeling, Grandma?" "Better than I have in months. Your plan worked." "Good, but Mom's getting suspicious, isn't she? I heard her on the phone yesterday when I walked by." "What did she say?" "Something about medication not working properly. We need to move fast now. She's going to figure out something's wrong." David's expression grew serious. "I think we need to gather evidence while we still can. Has Mom left her laptop open recently?" "She usually uses it in the kitchen after dinner." "Why?" "Because I think we'll find proof of what she's been doing, and maybe we can figure out where she's been getting those drugs." That evening, Carol received a phone call during dinner. She stepped into the hallway to take it, speaking quietly but with obvious agitation. "I need more of the same medication," I heard her say. "The current batch isn't working like it used to." "Yes, the same sedatives as before." "No, she can't see a real doctor. That would ruin everything." David caught my eye and pointed toward the kitchen, where Carol's laptop sat open on the counter. While she continued her conversation, David quickly accessed her computer. What we found made my blood run cold. Carol's browser history showed searches for how long do sedatives take to kill elderly, inheritance laws when parent dies, and signs of natural death in stroke patients. Her email contained conversations with someone named Rick Martinez about obtaining prescription drugs without prescriptions. But worst of all was a document she'd created titled Timeline, Mom's Decline, with entries dating back to her move-in date, Week 1. Established medication control. Started with low doses to avoid suspicion. Week 6. Increased dosages. Mom showing expected confusion and weakness. Week 12. Added muscle relaxant. Financial transfers proceeding smoothly. Week 16. Mom completely dependent. Will signing completed successfully. The final entry was dated just 3 days ago. Week 18. Medication effectiveness declining. May need to switch to stronger compounds or alternative methods. David quickly photographed the screen while I kept watch. Then he found Carol's Facebook messages with someone named Rick. The messages revealed everything. Carol had been communicating with Rick through Facebook Messenger for months. Rick worked at a pharmacy and had been supplying Carol with unprescribed sedatives. Their relationship was clearly more than professional, with romantic messages mixed in with discussions about drug dosages and my treatment schedule. Just as David finished photographing the evidence, Carol's voice grew louder in the hallway. "Fine, I'll come by tomorrow after work to pick up the new prescription. But this has to work better than the last batch." We heard her footsteps approaching the kitchen. David quickly closed the laptop and pretended to be helping me with my evening tea. "Everything okay, Mom?" David asked as Carol returned. "Just scheduling a doctor's appointment," Carol lied smoothly. "Your grandmother needs some medication adjustments." The next evening, David called while Carol was supposedly at work. "I followed her after she left the dental office," he said quietly. "She went to Westside Pharmacy and met with a man who gave her a paper bag. I got photos of the whole transaction." "What do we do now?" "We call the police. We have her computer evidence, the text messages, photos of the drug transaction, and the original pill analysis. It's enough to prove attempted murder and financial fraud." "David, what if they don't believe us? What if she convinces them I'm just a confused old woman making false accusations?" "Grandma, the evidence speaks for itself. And I have one more idea. When the police question her, she'll probably try to contact Rick to warn him. If they're monitoring her communications, they'll catch her trying to destroy evidence." Tuesday morning, police officers arrived at my house with a warrant for Carol's arrest. I watched from my bedroom window as they handcuffed my daughter in the driveway. David had been right. When Carol was allowed her phone call at the police station, she immediately tried to warn Rick to dispose of the drugs and delete their messages. But the police were already monitoring her communications and had arrested Rick at the pharmacy an hour earlier. When faced with the overwhelming evidence, Carol initially tried to fight the charges, but after months of failed plea negotiations, her trial lasted only 4 days. Carol's computer evidence, the Facebook messages with Rick, David's photographs of the drug transaction, and the pill analysis all painted a clear picture of systematic poisoning and financial fraud. The prosecution proved that Carol had stolen over $60,000 from my accounts while gradually increasing sedative dosages with the intent to cause my death. Rick testified against her in exchange for a reduced sentence, admitting he'd supplied the unprescribed drugs and helped plan the timing of my natural decline. Carol was sentenced to 15 years in prison for elder abuse, financial fraud, and attempted murder. Rick received 5 years for his role in the conspiracy. 6 months later, I sat in my kitchen with David, both of us grateful for the quiet normalcy of honest conversation. I'd recovered all but $10,000 of the stolen money and regained complete control of my health and finances. "Do you ever regret turning her in?" I asked David one evening. "Never," he said without hesitation. "She made her choice when she decided to poison you for money. I just made sure there were consequences." At 72, I'm driving myself to appointments again, managing my own medications, and making my own decisions about my life and money. I volunteer at Lincoln Elementary twice a week, helping current administrators who remind me why I loved working with people who valued honesty and hard work. Sometimes people ask if I'm bitter about what Carol did to me. The truth is, I feel more sad than angry. She had everything she needed: a mother who loved her, a son who respected her, and the promise of inheritance when I died naturally. Instead, she chose greed over love and lost everything that actually mattered. But David showed me that real family isn't about blood relations. It's about people who protect you when you're vulnerable, who choose what's right over what's easy. And that's a lesson worth more than all the money in the world. So, that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Was I naive for not recognizing the signs of poisoning earlier? Or is it natural to trust the person caring for you? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more stories like mine.